Episode 7 of The Acolyte just dropped. What new information have we gotten before the season finale? Right Sons, everybody, Batuuboii here, and welcome to another review video for The Acolyte. This week we are looking at episode 7, titled Choice. It dropped last night, and from just off basic non-spoiler-y material, we return back to Brendock. It is another flashback episode continuing the other point of view from what we saw in episode 3. That's more of what I'm going to go into it. The biggest thing being that this is what we will be getting before the season finale next Tuesday. So go ahead and get prepped on that before I dive into the more spoilery type stuff in this episode. Do yourself a favor and go watch it. So like I said earlier, we start off this episode back on Brendock 16 years earlier. We are back in basically episode 3. So we are now seeing the events of what happened then through the eyes of the Jedi, which is something that we didn't really get a whole lot of in episode 3. We mainly saw this from the perspective of May and Osha and the rest of the Coven. So now we get to see this side of the story, which I feel like you can kind of interpret this as Sol talking to May about the events as she's strapped down to the table at the end of episode 6. But again, that's up to interpretation, but I think it kind of makes sense. So we start off the episode, we see the 4 Jedi, Indara, Kelnaka, Torben, and Sol, basically just gathering plant life. We later learn that they are on Brendock to essentially find a source of life, because before that, Brendock was cataloged as a lifeless planet just due to a hyperspace accident. We don't really get much information more regarding that. Obviously, there's signs of plant life. There's life growing on here, so they've been there for about 7 weeks now, and Torben is just kind of over it. He wants to go back to Coruscant, and he doesn't really see the point of all of this and why they're looking for life on this desolate planet. But Sol brings up the point that they are looking for a vergence. A vergence is an unusual yet naturally occurring concentration of force energy, either localized in a place, an object, or a person. So from my understanding, this vergence is what is creating life on Brendock. But with this information, they continue to look around through the forest. The next day, Kelnaka is there with like a little metal detector. He's looking like one of those old people on the beach. It looks really funny, but I'm just glad that we get to see a little bit more of Kelnaka again. And it's in here that we get some very interesting conversations between Indara and Sol, which not only gives us more screen time with Carrie-Anne Moss, thank God, but we also get to see a little bit more mannerisms of Sol that just continue to make his character very, I would say, just like weird. So in here, they talk about how Torben is kind of pissed off that he wants to go back home, but they have to stay here and find the vergence. And it's here that Sol says that he was disturbed, unbalanced. Indara replies, "You were disturbed. Do not confuse Corbin's feelings with your own. That's why I have a Padawan and you don't." Kind of like in a joking matter, but you can tell that Sol is not having it. He does not appreciate the slow burn that Indara has placed onto him. It is here that they decide to split up. They think they'll cover more ground if they obviously go in different directions. So Sol takes this kick-ass speeder. It looks really cool, and I need like a little miniature on my desk of that. But he parks it, he continues to walk through the forest, and this is where we start to get our first connection between this episode and episode 3. He finds himself at the Bunta tree, where we first see young Osha and young May. We see them messing around with that little butterfly looking thing. Obviously, like, he's surprised. He has found 4 sensitive children. So now he gets on his communicator and tries to get a message out to Indara saying that we are not alone. This is also where we see them walk away. We see Mother Coral again getting upset with the children, telling them to get a move on before anybody sees them. but Sol does. So Sol follows the children back to their coven. We get a little bit more of what the outside of it looks like. It's essentially this giant wall with an elevator in it. We later find out that this could have been used as a mining shaft before the coven took it over. Sol is trying to find a way in. He looks up at this giant wall, and the way the camera kind of made it look like, because he kind of, like, he doesn't run towards the wall, but he moves very briskly towards it. I thought we were either gonna get him like force jumping up this wall or running just up the wall in general, but he just aggressively goes to the wall and just starts climbing up it, which again is still a massive feat. He is climbing up this wall, he's able to get over it and get himself into the room where we see Mother Anastasia training with the girls. We get that moment when Mother Anastasia asks the girls to block. Osha doesn't. May jumps in front of Osha and blocks Mother Anastasia's force push. Kind of get a little bit of that, and Sol runs away. And it's after this that we also see him look at these mothers around the hole that we saw in episode 3, preparing for the ascension that's going to occur later that evening. So he knows that there's some crazy stuff going on over here. And it's in here we jump immediately back to Indara and Sol talking about the things that he had just seen. He says that there are some witches. Torben brings up Night Sisters, which, again, I thought this was funny about just, you know, a lot of the fandom jumping to conclusions. So Torben goes, Night Sisters, right? And Indara replies with, we do not have all the information yet. So again, it's just, I think this funny little nod that, you know, we continue to learn more and more about what's going on in this show. We get one piece of information that bubbles up into so many other theories and so many different means of interpretation, but just wait, the show is continuing. We're gonna get that piece of information, so just chill out. Sol is very interested in the safety of the twins. Dara wants to confirm with the council on how they should proceed, but Sol insists that they just go and see it for themselves. So already we are seeing Sol take personal interest in the safety of these twins that, besides just looking at them from afar, he has never met before. So again, it's starting to already get a little bit weird as to why he's taking personal interest in wanting to protect these twins. I get, obviously, like, these are Force-sensitive children. The Jedi want to recruit Force-sensitive children around the galaxy. Indara sees that, but again, wants to go through the beats, wants to confer with the council on how they should proceed, but Sol is already jumping ahead to conclusions and wanting to just get the children, get them trained, get them out of there, and we will later learn a little bit more as to why he wants to. It's here they jump back to the Coven, and this is where we walk right into that confrontation between the Jedi and the Coven. Just like how it happened in episode 3, they ask about the children, blah, blah, blah. In here, in episode 7, we get a little bit more of what was going on with Torben during that entire interaction. Camera focuses on Torben, and we start to hear some like echoey voices around the area, and all of a sudden everybody has disappeared. Guessing we are now locked in Torben's mind, and it's just him and Mother Anastasia. He obviously is in his mind, so she knows almost everything about him, but the things that she brought up obviously were for some good reason, because she says that Torben is the son of paupers from the planet Bonadon. Pauper being just a very poor person, so obviously he came from scraps. His family did not have a lot of money back on the planet of Bonadon, with Bonadon being a chief port world corporate sector, boasting 10 gigantic spaceports. It was a strip mine planet at the end of the Hydian Way. Bodanians, much like Torben, found offworld were either from wealthy corporate families or those that had escaped the life of corporate servitude. So I'm starting to either think that his family was in debt to people on Bonadon, or they were slaves, much like Anakin. But I just thought it was very interesting that they had to give certain context to that, because I mean, up until then, like, we don't really know like where Sol is from, where Indara is from. Obviously Kelnaka is from Kashyyyk, but they're giving a certain backstory to Torben, and obviously because this can play into the fact that, you know, she's in his mind, she can read everything that's going on in there, including his feelings of wanting to go back home. So she continues to promise him that she can help him get back home. She just wants to hear hear him say it, he succumbs to it. He says, I want to return to Coruscant, and Anastasia commands him to kneel. It's then that we see his eyes turn black, and we get that moment in episode 3 where he becomes possessed by the sisters and kind of used as blackmail to have the Jedi leave. Again, Indara fights back, saying, you wouldn't deny the Jedi to test these force-sensitive children with your permission, of course. They agree to do so. They release Torben and say that they will be at the ship at around noon the next day. Cut back to the ship, and it's just a shot of Torben sitting down and Indara kind of just looking over him. I'm guessing that she must have just scolded him for letting his mind succumb to the powers of Mother Anastasia. We don't get much more of that. We can just kind of assume that he just got his butt ripped by Indara. Indara brings up the fact that testing the girls was a good diversion to give her more time to confer with the council as to what they should do next. But Sol, again, is continuing to jump forward as he says, I feel that Osha is meant to be my Padawan. Who is protecting these children if not the Jedi? Indara replies, but do not confuse what Osha wants with what you want. We continue to see that Sol is projecting his own feelings, but he doesn't want to own up to them, because he knows that these strong feelings are forbidden in the Jedi Order. So he continues to try and push them through other people instead of just admitting it himself that he's desperate to want a Padawan. He's desperate to climb the ranks of the Jedi, which I'm sure that's the goal of every Jedi. But he has a very obsessive tendency to want to climb those ranks, as he really wants Osha to become his Padawan. He wants to save these children. He wants to just keep going. But again, it comes off as very, very strong. It's the next day. The girls come to take the Jedi tests, which again, in episode 3, we got more of Osha's tests, but this time we get May's. So May walks into the ship with Torben. Torben asks for a blood sample from May, sticks her with the little thing. Something I thought that was hilarious is that Indara pretty much goes over everything that they're gonna do. Like, we're gonna use this little computer, images are gonna pop up, and you're gonna tell me what you see. And then May interrupts Indara and just says, what do you want me to do? Like, I cannot stand May as a child, and that's not anything like towards bad writing. Like, this actress is playing it very well, but she's such a brat, and she obviously doesn't want to be there. So Sol keeps putting up pictures, she keeps getting him wrong, and he kind of tricks her, sort of like how he did Osha, but he just doesn't put up an image, and she says, oh, there's a necklace on screen. And Sol admits that he hasn't even put up an image yet. And this is where we kind of see like a softer side of Indara, where she asks about May's insignia on her forehead. Oh, it's really pretty. How did you get that? Is that from the Ascension ceremony? Because they had talked about it a little bit in the previous scene, and she agrees, yes, this is where it comes from. May explains the Ascension, but there is a line in particular because, you know, she talks about, like, this is what my mom says will help me and Osha become leaders of the Coven later on. Dara says, well, you're a child. How are you expected to become a leader? May replies, well, I don't really know. She says, everyone must walk through fear and must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny. Yikes. What are they actually doing in this Ascension? Like, I know we saw a little bit of it in episode 3 where they got that insignia from Mother Anastasia. Osha was about to get it before the Jedi showed up. But what else happens during that Ascension ceremony is kind of scary. And Sol knows she botched it on purpose. Obviously, she was told to fail. So he suggests to take a different approach with Osha when she comes in. Indara agrees. We cut to that part of episode 3 where he goes over, you know, there are other Force-sensitive children in the Order, much like her, which, again, could be different interpretations. Sol is obviously saying, like, there are other Force-sensitive children created by normal means in the Jedi Order, but it could be interpreted that Osha is thinking that there are other people like her specifically that were maybe not made through natural means. But again, it's up to interpretation, but I think that it's a very interesting look into what she might think are other people like her, because at this point the only other person that she knows is like her is May, and they're not really getting along at this moment. Right after this, Osha gets the test answers correctly, and this entire time Indara is just kind of looking on with just a very worried expression. We cut to Indara kind of looking on this screen. She asks Torben to go with Kilnaka to continue looking for life on the planet and to await further orders from the council. Sol is kind of upset, saying, you know, Osha passed. Like, obviously, we have to take her to the Jedi Order. What are we doing? She just says we need to wait for the council's orders. It cuts to later that evening. Sol is kind of pacing back and forth, like looking very, very worried. And Indara comes out and lets them know that the council won't sanction bringing the twins to the temple and separating them from the coven. Sol obviously is upset by this. And Torben even gets onto Sol's side, saying that he believes that these witches are dangerous. They present a very clear danger to the safety of these children. She insists that they don't continue to meddle in the coven's business. So contrary to my belief, because I always thought that Indara was going to be the one to kind of incite this and, you know, maybe want to take out the coven and destroy them, but Indara is very reserved. She is a very just by the book Jedi. She follows orders, she follows the council's advice, and just wants to continue their mission that they were given and not meddle in any sort of business that is on this foreign planet. So good for her in showing that, you know, there are other people that are probably going to mess this up very badly. Before we get into that, something that Sol brought up was like, you know, obviously Osha passed. Indara says, after you coached her, do not form this girl's destiny because you have formed an emotional attachment to her. We all know forming emotional attachments is a big no-no in the Jedi Order and a quick way to find yourself in the dark side. We have seen these sort of emotional attachments being developed in this episode. We see it all throughout the show where he kind of sees himself as this father figure to Osha, and it just starts to dwindle very quickly, the sort of sincerity of these feelings. So Sol, it's not looking good for you, buddy. We then get the test results from the blood test that Torben took of May and Osha, and by God, I jumped out of my seat when Torben said that the M count is extremely high. We all know what that means. They're still testing for midichlorians in the High Republic. We have not necessarily gotten this since Phantom Menace, and they brought it back. So good for you, Star Wars. Bring back the midichlorians. And it's here, obviously, Torben is saying that their M count is extremely high, above just normal levels for even an adult to have a concentration in the Force. But something he brings up is that their symbionts are exactly the same, with their symbiotes kind of explaining that it's the embodiment of themselves, kind of like their DNA almost. And obviously, Indara says, well, they're twins. Of course they're going to be the same, but he says no, like even with twins there would be slight differences, which is true. I mean, identical twins will look pretty much identical, but they'll have some slight differences, whether in personality or in just slight tweaks of their physical features. But according to this test, it is like they are two copies of the exact same person, pretty much. They say that as well, almost like that there was one being that they split into two entities, being May and Osha, and this gives enough evidence of there being a Vergence on this planet. And Torben says, Vergence, say less. This is my ticket home. Let's get on a speeder and go grab these kids. It's at this point, even Sol is kind of against it. He's kind of yelling at Torben. Maybe he's just trying to make face, but Torben gets on the speeder and says, this is our ticket home, and just starts making his way to the coven. Sol follows behind him from orders from Indara. Indara and Kilnaka get on the transport ship and start heading over to the coven. We then cut to the scene where Osha is talking to her mom about wanting to become a Jedi. And again, at this point, Anastasia is ready to let her child go and follow her destiny and make that choice. And she says that I want to take your wish into consideration. I just have to speak with the rest of the mothers. The other mothers are not happy about it. They don't really kind of see these children as somewhat of importance because they say you're their mother, but you are also our leader. And Mother Anastasia says, I choose mother. I choose the side of wanting to be a mother to this child over being a leader of this crazy witch cult. Cut to Mother Coral, who in that scene had to take May out as she was, having a little temper tantrum about her sister. Coral kind of agrees with her. She says, you want to stop Osha from leaving? Get angry. And she, tries to hit her with her baton, and May blocks it, and she's like, good. Use that anger. May takes this stick and breaks the door controls to the elevator shaft and says that no one can get in or out. Everyone is stuck here, which we then see on the other side. Sol and Torben can't get in. They got to go up again. And it's here that like we kind of see Sol not scold Torben, but kind of just get very angry with him, saying like, you can't let them get in your mind. We need to save those twins. We have to do this. And Torben's like, all right, dude, like, yeah, like my mind is fortified. Like, chill out. We also see another perspective from Indara and Kelnaka saying, you know, Indara can't land the ship, but is Kelnaka able to make the jump? Which when I hear that, I think of hyperspace, but it didn't make any sense. But it's literally, can you jump off of this ship and just go straight down into the open courtyard where the coven is? And Kelnaka's like, yeah, obviously, I'm a Wookiee. I got these legs. We cut to May and Osha in her room. May takes that little book with like the Jedi symbol on it, locks Osha in her room, and we see her grab the lantern with the flames in it. I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, all right, like, who made this fire? And obviously it was May. May hovers the book over the flame. She starts the fire. She kind of throws the lantern on the ground. Flames are spewing everywhere. She's trying to put it out, but she's just a little kid, so she instantly starts crying for her mom, and she runs out that way to try and find her. Cut to Torben and Sol. They make their way into the coven where not all the mothers, but a lot of like the battle-ready mothers. They have like bow and arrows pointing at them, and we also see Mother Carl and Anastasia. They're blocking their way. They just begin to talk about what are your intentions with the children, blah, blah, blah. But a line that was mentioned by Anastasia that I thought was probably one of the best lines in the show was, someday those noble intentions of yours will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy, which it does. It certainly does in the end. So at this point, Torben is ready to fight. Like, he already starts pulling out like his lightsaber. He doesn't ignite it just yet. May runs out. Sol calls her Osha. So I'm guessing he doesn't really see the difference in them yet, or he hasn't just seen the giant insignia on her forehead from that far away. But this is enough for Coral to aggro Torben, enough for him to ignite his lightsaber, which is yellow. Awesome. Love that. In the middle of this, Mother Anastasia kind of pushes her hands out and screams no, and all of a sudden Mother Anastasia starts to just like, I couldn't think of any other comparison other than when people get Thanos in Infinity War. Like, they kind of just like turn into these particles. Her face becomes like very scary looking, like a specter almost. Like, she starts to just become like dust almost, and we start to kind of see May turn into dust also. So I'm thinking, what is happening? But before she can really just become this magical entity, Sol ignites his lightsaber and sticks it into Mother Anastasia's chest. Sol just killed an unarmed person. It is confirmed, like, that one of those first lines in episode 1 that, you know, the Jedi do not harm the unarmed. May said, yes, they do, and by God, they did. Sol just stabbed Mother Anastasia in the chest. She's done. But before she's done, she tells Sol that I was ready to let Osha go. Osha chose you in the end. We were going to let her become a Jedi, and you guys just kind of messed all of that up, and she just dies. Obviously, Coral is very upset with this, so she begins to fight Sol. The other mothers start to shoot arrows at Torben, and Torben is swinging this lightsaber around like he's kind of doing like the little Anakin moves. Shout out to Dean Charles Chapman for the crazy lightsaber skills that he puts on display in these scenes, because they are great. Like, again, if you have nothing nice to say about the Acolyte, you cannot deny that the lightsaber choreography in this show is top notch. Like, they are going crazy, and don't worry, we're about to get more of it. And obviously Sol is kind of upset with what he's done. He knows this is not the Jedi way. Like, this is him letting his feelings take over and, you know, cloud his judgment and make irrational decisions. But he is still fighting Coral, but kind of just, you know, he's not going on the offensive. Like, he's just kind of dodging every move. He's blocking her axe looking thing, and like she even screams at Sol like, fight me, but he continues not to. He grabs onto her axe, and obviously he begins to see the building exploding. We also get a shot of it from above from Indara's perspective, and it's at this point like he just wants this fight to end, so he ignites his lightsaber and cuts the axe head off. He talks to Torben and says the twins are inside, we need to save them, and And it's here that we get a really interesting perspective of, we see Mother Coral walk around, and I'm thinking like, oh, she's just gonna continue to fight them, like she's gonna block their way in, and Mother Coral turns into like this magical force, I'll just say that. And we kind of hear like the other mothers like kind of humming in the background, but like she essentially just disappears, and we get her talking in the background, kind of like when Torben got possessed, but he insists that like, no, it's happening again, but my mind is fortified. Mother Coral says, we're not talking about you. Cut to up the stairs in the courtyard, and there is Kelnaka standing very menacingly. His eyes are black. He ignites his lightsaber, and finally we are going to get Kelnaka fighting with a lightsaber, and it is against other Jedi. I was very surprised with everything that we were seeing. Like, again, the choreography is amazing. He's going after Sol, he's going after Torben, he's swinging that lightsaber. We're getting double force pushes from Kelnaka, and him just jumping high up in the air, and he's just slamming that lightsaber down on Torben, trying to get at him. He's able to force grab Torben and pin him to a wall and try and slice him, but Torben has him blocked. And it's also here that we see that Torben's face is all cut up, which is where I'm assuming is where he got that scar that we saw in episode 2. But it's insane. This was like one of my favorite parts of the show, and then my favorite shot of this show, or one of them, there's a lot of really good shots, is Sol is able to kind of distract Kelnaka and get him off of Torben. Kelnaka swings his lightsaber kind of horizontally, and Sol like jumps over it in slow motion, and we get this amazing just picturesque shot of Sol swinging at Kelnaka while he's in the air. It looks badass. But he's able to disarm Kelnaka without harming him. He's able to just kind of hit his hand. Kelnaka lets go of his lightsaber, but Kelnaka's a Wookiee. He's got other means of killing people that he wants to kill. They get into kind of a hand-to-hand combat situation, and Kelnaka grabs Sol by the neck and starts trying to choke him out. And it's here that Indara comes out, is able to pin Kelnaka to the ground and put her hand in Kelnaka's face, using the Force to try and clear out his mind. And throughout the fight, we get these shots cutting back to all of the mothers with their eyes black in that little room where the training was happening, and they're all kind of humming in unison, kind of just swinging back and forth. I guess kind of just using that power of one, power of two, power of many, like it's the power of the collective coven taking over Kelnaka's body, using him for their purposes. But she's able to use the Force and clear his mind, and we cut back and they kind of all just like either die or fall unconscious. Like, I think it's unconscious. It'd be really weird if Indara just like straight up used the Force or another place in the coven and just killed all of these women. Like, that would be insane. It's after this that Indara says, go get the twins, get them now. And Sol obviously jumps right into action, starts to try and look for the twins. He goes into that room. He sees all the bodies littered of all of the witches on the ground, except Mother Coral. We still don't know where she is, so I'm hoping we get something in episode 8. We cut to that point where it's Osha on one side of a broken bridge and May on the other, and they're both reaching out for each other. I think they're both trying to use like the Force to try and hold up their portion of the bridge, but Sol puts out both of his hands and is clearly holding on to both of these sides, and it is obviously it's not really working out. He's struggling very hard to try and hold both of these sides, so he has to make a very important choice as to which twin is he actually going to save. And he chooses Osha. He's able to go and move both of his hands. May's side of the bridge collapses instantly as she falls into the cavern. Osha falls, but Sol is obviously able to save her, saying, I got you. And it cuts to black. I love how the Acolyte chooses to just cut things to black at these pivotal moments, and I'm thinking, oh my god, this episode is just over. But it's not. We cut back to the transport ship, leaving Brandok. We see Osha on the bed with the respirator in her face. Just, she's recovering. Torben looks messed up. Like, he's got scars all over his face. He has that prominent one above his eye. Like, it's like halfway closed, which, again, I'm trying to figure out why it looks all cat-like when we see him in episode 2, but maybe it's a replacement. Maybe they had to take out the eye and replace it with a new one. But obviously Indara is pissed at Torben and Sol for disobeying their orders. Sol continues to preach that he was only thinking about the twins' safety and that he had to make a choice. Indara responds that without any thought about the consequences. And this is here that like we kind of got like inklings of like maybe Indara didn't. They keep saying that Indara didn't want Osha in the Jedi Order, like that she is personally responsible for Indara or for Osha leaving or all of this. Like, no, Indara never hated Osha. She just knew what they were doing was wrong, but Sol continued to push and it just kept pissing her off to the point where she has no choice but to take this child because Sol has already destroyed her family, destroyed her home, but now you're gonna go and bring yourself to the council to confess for your crimes and kill another dream of this child? Like, no, this is not the Jedi. You know that what you've done is not the Jedi way, but you're continuing to just be selfish at the expense of everyone's feelings around you. Torben asks, what will we tell the council? And Indara says, we'll tell them the truth. May burned down the witch's fortress and everyone was lost. That it was May's fault, it was a giant accident, and the Jedi just happened to be there to save these children. Before she says that, Indara says, before you throw yourself at the mercy of the council, ask yourself why you made this choice. Correct, because why is Sol obsessed with taking Osha on as a Padawan? Why is he so desperate to have one? Like, he obviously made these choices for a reason, and he needs to own up to it. He can't just look for that in the council. He didn't even want to listen to them. So he's gonna man up and own up to it, because it's at this moment that Osha wakes up and starts asking where her mom is and all of this. Sol says we're on our way to Coruscant. Osha asks what happened. Sol looks back at Indara. Indara kind of gives a look of, come on, tell him. Sol cuts back and says, May started a fire. Episode ends. Cut to black, because May certainly did start a fire. Boy, are we going to figure it out, because after looking at the trailer, I'm thinking like there cannot be any other possible scenes that we have not gotten yet. Like we're looking, and me and Chris did find 2 scenes that we hadn't seen yet, and there's only 1 episode left, so either they put this up for filler or we are getting these scenes in the season finale of The Acolyte next Tuesday. I am excited for whatever is to come in this episode. It's gonna be either a nice bow on top and we're gonna get questions answered. I'm hoping that it's gonna be a little bit longer. This last episode, much like episode 3, was about like 42 minutes long, but I'm hoping it kind of stays at that runtime, that we get a lot of our questions answered. We get to learn a little bit more about Kamir, the master. We get to learn a little bit more about this magic that we saw in this episode. And I want to know where Mother Coral is. I need more Mother Coral content, and I need to see her in this next episode. But again, I'm excited to see what happens. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What did you think of the episode? What are you most excited for in this season finale? And make sure to like and subscribe for more Star Wars content. But until next time, and until next Tuesday, till the spire, my friends.